This is a Soulfire production. Welcome to Mother. No, it's Mother. Welcome to Mother, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way you never have before, but have always needed. It's time we rewrite the Mother Code. Welcome to this week's episode of Mother, Rewriting the Mother Code with me, Dr. Gertrude Lyons. I'm so excited. I was just chatting. I'm like, we got to start recording with someone that I've known for a while, but I couldn't be more excited to have as a guest, Kelley Nemiro. Welcome, Kelley.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been too long, and I will put it out there because I don't know if you knew or if you knew it was okay, but you were my coach with my husband, and it was so fabulous. We got so much out of it during a really hard, when COVID, we had our first baby, so much was going on. So
yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because I'm like, I didn't ask her that if we should say that or not, if that's okay. So yay, thank you. Well, it was such an honor and delight, and I'm sure some of that will come in. But I'm going to say a little bit about Kelley as I do, but I know that the highlight is hearing her story, and then we get to from there dig in, because when I first met Kelley, it was kind of under just a hey, as a couple, we would like some coaching, and great, that's what I do, and but then I get to know people, and I got to discover just what a huge powerhouse you are, this self-made woman, entrepreneur, in many respects, that, went from kind of a more business focus, whatnot, into, and not wellness, and that isn't a business, but you'll share more about that pivot. Yeah, exactly. And then, as she does, went full out and becoming just the best in the field in wellness, health coaching, nutrition, getting, so she's certified at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, American Association of Drugless Practitioners, which I'd love to hear more about, because that sounds right up my alley, and International Association for Health Coaches, and has just a wildly successful health and wellness business, and cares very, very deeply, and lives what she preaches, what she does. And then also, you and your husband have a podcast together, and we can talk all about that too. Yeah. Balancing the chaos.
We're very excited about that.
I'm excited.
Words. That was such a fabulous intro. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's all true. So if you wouldn't mind, kind of bring us on the journey, how you got to be doing what you're doing, because I know it was all through personal experience, and, as a woman, as, then even, pre-marriage, getting married, and through all this, and the discovery of you and tuning into you, and just, all that.
Yeah. My life did not always look as good as it does on social media now. And that's to say, everyone's life on social media is only the highlights, right? Mm-hmm. But back in the day, I would say a decade ago, I wouldn't have wanted to share any of it. I was very uncomfortable in my own skin, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. I was struggling for the most of my early 20s with an eating disorder that was very well hidden, because I was never one of those people who was so thin that people were we're worried about you. I was just under eating, over exercising, and it was still hard for me to lose weight. And it affected my relationships. I think that had come into at least one of our conversations back when you were coaching my husband, Chad, and I, was that, it was hard for us to do things at one point back before we were ever married. I didn't want to go to restaurants, and we ended up actually breaking up for 2 years. And that was a really beautiful time for me to be able to work on myself, and to get to know myself, and to get to know my body, and to start to build some confidence and trust back that I had lost over the years of dieting and all of that. And so what I learned through all that, fast forwarding through this story, is that because of the way I was living, really restricting my food, and exercising too much, and also stressing a ton. Like I was stressing because I wasn't sleeping enough. I was stressing because I was drinking a ton of alcohol at the time. I was stressing because I was in school and had a job at the same time, getting my MBA. Like there was so much stress on top of the stressors of not eating that my body was like, we've had enough. Like we're not doing this anymore. Like we are shutting down. And so my thyroid started to slow down, which means that's like your master metabolism gland. My metabolism started to slow down. I started to gain a ton of weight. My hair started falling out. I was super anxious all the time. And I ended up getting put on anti-anxiety medication and birth control pills because that's what the doctors told me were going to solve my problem.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so Chad and I ended up getting back together. I had really worked a lot on my relationship with food and my body and movement, and that was really helpful. But I was still on these prescription pills. And it wasn't until I started to do some research on my own, and when we decided like, hey, maybe we'll get married, maybe we'll have kids, and like that whole prospect of the future was there, that I was like, well, I can't be on these drugs if I want to get pregnant. I can't be taking this stuff. Like I can't be on birth control if I want to get pregnant. I can't be on anxiety pills if I want to get pregnant. And so I had to do a ton of research. I had to really understand health-wise, lab work-wise, what was going on in my body so I could start to take control, because nobody in the doctor's office was really like giving me the time of day or listening to me.
Yeah, they just want to fix it, right? Like the struggle do it, right?
Exactly. So after about a year of trying to figure that out, going back to school, getting more information there, I got off the meds. Chad and I ended up getting pregnant in 2019 with our first son, West. And in all of that, I was like, I want to help other people do this. And I want other people to know that this is possible, that they don't have to live their life super uncomfortable, hating their body, hating their weight, hating how they feel when they wake up in the morning, feeling like their periods are like a pain in the butt, because it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
And so much of how you feel in your own skin is completely in your control. And it's about like, what's more important to you? The people pleasing, all the shoulds, the stress, like the way that we like are expected to be living, or is it like healing your body and feeling good in your own skin? And so that was the choice that I really had to make.
Which you did. So that was a big transition, like to decide, because you were already successful at what you were doing, if you want to share that. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm, necessarily looking for another. I mean, it was a fairly big pivot job-wise, career-wise. Do you want to say a little bit about that? Because I think sometimes people think about like, oh, I would love to do that, but I don't know, how do I make such a big move?
I love that question, because I think that in that story, like that I just mentioned, was like maybe 3 minutes long, and it makes it sound like that happened overnight. And I promise you it did not. It was really a big transitional period in my life that took the better part of like 3 or 4 years. And that last piece of that puzzle was like a year of me going back to school. And at the beginning of the school that I went back to, it's called the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I didn't even think that I was going to change my career. I was doing it solely for myself, because I'm like, I want to learn. I want to know what's going on in my body. What are the things that are affecting my digestion and making me feel bloated all the time, making me feel exhausted? Like, why do I feel like this? And when I had all the information, and after I had my first son, that's when it was like, that was January. I was also in a career where I worked for my family's business I had worked there for the last like 4 years doing marketing for gaming. And one of the big pieces of the puzzle that they talk about at this school that I went to is that everything in your life, whether it's your finances, your relationships, your career, impact how you feel in your body. And I never really thought about it that way. And that job that I was at really felt like as much as I love my family, like a clock in, clock out type situation. Like there was really no passion there. It's like, okay, how can I get the work done that has to be done and get home and live my life? And it wasn't like it was easy. Like by no means was it easy. It was just, I didn't have this fire lit within me to be like, oh, this is really, helping someone else or changing someone's life. And when I realized that I had like what I had done for myself and that I could offer that to somebody else, I almost like was like, at first I was like, let me just like try doing this with some friends or like
Yeah.
my first person I actually helped was my yoga teacher. She's
Oh,
like, you changed my life. Like, this is insane. Like, oh, I feel totally different. Like, I've lost 20 pounds. I feel like I don't have this brain fog, like all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I could really do this. And so it was like, I know that there are a lot of people out there who have the fear of failure. That's a lot of the clients I deal with
yeah.
that. And so there's like almost this procrastination of like things off. I'm kind of the opposite where I'm like, I'll do it and I'll figure it out on the back end. And
Mm,
so I put up a website. I, put it out there on Instagram. I'm like, I'm taking clients and like the spots while I was still in this career, by the way, like I was still
yeah.
working at the office. So I was taking people like in my off hours.
Which
At,
weren't many.
yeah.
Right?
And we filled it up like right away. I feel like that's how you probably also know like this is something that you should be doing. And yeah, and I just kind of figured it out as I went. I started to, over time raise my prices, change my website, all of that good stuff. But it was a really, really exciting time. And now I can say I've been doing it for 3 years and I would never go back.
Uh, oh, isn't that wonderful well, and there's something just in what you just said about this fear of failure that can often stop us. And, that
Mhm.
might be some of what you actually address in the coaching, because I know as a coach, your title is like wellness and health coach, but you know that that's tied to everything else, right? In their life. And you become like just, a full on coach. And that's how it goes. Cause it's, otherwise then you're like a medical doctor that's just trying to fix, kind of hone in because it's all connected. But this whole like being willing to take a risk. And I just want to name that as a very feminine. And when I say feminine, just, quality, you know, yin aspect of us that is willing to go into the unknown, right?
Yeah.
And there's a certain level of trust and unknown. And because I think we get stopped really easily with oh, I have to figure it out ahead of time, or somehow I have to know that this is, the right thing before I do it. But you don't. You do it you find out by engaging fully with it. And I think that's a beautiful part of your story is no, I'm just gonna like wrap myself around it and and yeah, and maybe not let go of that job right away. That's totally fine, right? We don't have to, we could still keep because that for security, kind of that safety aspect before we, make that break. And I can relate to that in many ways myself, but I want to underline that particular feminine aspect because you're also talking about then in your coaching, tuning into yourself and your body.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, because I'm not Western medicine's evil.
Um,
It's just too masculine. Like it's too, that left side of our brain, like, let's pick an area and fix it. And just what you're saying, nobody's listening to me. Nobody's, we just want to kind of make us all like it's cookie cutter. Oh,
mhm.
just do this is what everybody does. It's like, no, I'm a unique person
Yeah.
and how do I learn to tune into myself? And I think that's something you really worked at for yourself. You want to say more about
Totally.
that?
Yeah, I love how you talk about masculine and feminine energy because I think that back in the time where I had my eating disorder, everything was about control, right? What can I
Mhm.
control? Like, how can I count this, track this, measure this? And it's so masculine,
Yeah.
like that energy. And a lot of what I learned in healing and going through therapy and all was like to be more in trust, to be more in that feminine energy, to be in less doing and more being. And
Mhm.
I think that in doing that with food, it really started to bleed into other areas of my life. And I'm so grateful because it's not easy work. It's actually really, really hard when you're so used to
Mhm.
doing something a certain way for so long, like breaking a habit like that. But man, how worth it is it when you actually like give in and say, okay, I'm going to trust this process and I'm going to trust that like my body is going to be okay because I'm nourishing it, like those types of things. And then letting that, like I said, bleed into other areas of your life. It's a really powerful thing. Cause like, I'm sure, I mean, I know you do. I've listened to your podcast. Like, you don't want none of the other masculine energy. But I think that in this
Right.
society we live in, we're so focused on the masculine energy, the doing, the productivity, all of that, that like so many of us are left with like zero of the feminine. And I think
Mm.
that when you think about doctors' offices and the way that that works, like you said, it's very cookie cutter. It's very like, okay, this is your problem. And like, we're going to fix it with the same band-aid solution that we give to everybody else.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't take the time, and it's not their fault because they don't really have the time. They're seeing patients every 7 minutes, but they don't take the time to, like you or myself as a coach, where I just spent an hour and a half with someone, understand every aspect and facet of
Mhm.
their life. What are you eating? How are you sleeping? What does your stress look like? What are your limiting beliefs? Like, there's so much that tie into
Yeah.
all of that. And when we can look at it from a holistic perspective, that's where the capacity for real change is.
And it's also where, and I think this gets under, yes, so then we can change, then we can, actually realize it sounds really hard. And, we'll say that it is hard work. There's pain involved, emotional pain and all that. But I don't think we always talk about like the upside of it, that actually digging in there and uncovering all this like stuff from the unconscious. Yeah, like in
Mm,
the moment, the thought of it and yeah, pain comes up and old pain and, working through stuff. But when you're in it, it's fine, and it's really beautiful. And then it's like this discoveries, it's like treasures, like, whoa, I didn't even know. And I think I know I've shared about this, in my podcast, like just to give an example, like in my conception journey, similarly, health things that were in the way of me even getting a period after I went off birth control. And it's like, again, the whole Western idea was like, here, take this medication. It'll help you ovulate. And then we'll send you to a fertility doctor. I'm like, wait a second. Like, and that's something I want to tag to get back to is that I think you and I, when someone else, I'm just grateful that somebody told me there's other ways to like, go about this, but to work on it so deeply emotionally, to have a discovery of like just how afraid I actually was to become a mother and to actually let my body even work so that I could, and tied to my mother and like afraid of how will I not just like make all the mistakes she did and all of this
mm,
like really painful stuff like, oh, so we'll just shut it all down. And
yeah.
literally like once, and it sounds like magic and I kind of think it was, but it's not because it was hard work that, once I let that come up, had all the feelings about it, I think I started my period the next month. And other things were I was doing other things physically and changing things physically, but that emotional piece sometimes can get, oh, well, that, can get dropped out. And it's such a it's like can be the linchpin so much, but I'm so grateful for that awareness, right? And I'm not saying you've had that exact experience, but I know that you've in
Yeah.
your work because you know what it means. Because we kind of all like also secretly want the quick fix. Like I'm not gonna lie,
Oh my
we
God.
all like and
Everybody wants a quick
our
fix. And I
our
feel like
culture's addicted to it, but we're missing out in the with the quick fix. I think you know that.
I say that all the time in the work that I do. Like,
Mhm.
people will come to me and be like, "Oh, I want to lose, 20 pounds. Like, is there a cleanse I can do?" And it's like, no, like, no, because that's just going to make everything that's going on in your body worse. It's going to make your body want to hold on to weight even more because you're stressing it out. And like, it's the same thing with all the emotional stuff, whether we're suppressing it with Instagram scrolling or online shopping or whatever it is that we don't want to
Yeah.
feel in the moment. All that does is that it pushes it down, but it gives it space to grow and grow and grow inside of us until we snap and like we have some sort of reactive response, when it's like if we feel it and we actually go through it and we understand like where in my childhood did that was a lot of work that you really helped me with. And then now I've taken and like I can help other people is what in my childhood has like caused me to feel like I need to control the situation or that I
Mhm.
am resentful about this situation because there's so many most of our beliefs we learn when we're
Yeah,
really
we get very wired, by our families and our and then the external culture after that. But yes, it's the programming happens.
and then those beliefs and the habits and the behaviors that come along with them aren't necessarily serving us well in adulthood, whether it's about trust or love or whatever the belief is about. And so it's like if we can do the work to actually understand where they came from, how they may have protected us before, but now that they're not, it's a lot easier to make the conscious shift rather than letting the subconscious control us.
Yeah. Oh, hear, hear. Yay. I know we agree. We agree, but I think we need to hear it. And that's why, just like you, why, this became so important to me because those aspects of my journey and doing that, it's like if I hadn't had other people kind of talking about holistic approaches or more natural medicine in addition to Western medicine, I wouldn't have known. I mean, that just wasn't in my atmosphere at the time. And maybe I would have gotten to it eventually, but I'm so grateful. So we gotta why it's important to talk about it, and having spaces, whether it's coaching and then, sometimes, in groups with others, with women, particularly in these topics, to have spaces to be real, and talk about it and dig in and understand that we're not alone. Cause I think that happens too, right?
Oh my gosh, so much. And I'm so glad that you brought up the group thing because for the longest time, I cannot tell you, like, I was always the person that was like, I'm never doing a group. I hate groups. Like, groups are like lame. I don't want other people to know my stuff, blah, blah, blah. And
Right.
then last year, I actually joined a group. And was probably the best thing that I ever did for myself because of exactly what you said. Like, I'm hearing other women talk about their
Yeah.
struggles as mothers, their struggles in marriage. And it's like, instead of thinking for so long that I'm alone and like I'm the only one going through this, it feels so good to understand that that is not the truth. Actually, everybody else is going through this. It may not be exactly the same, but it gives me permission to not only feel more comfort, but also understand that there are different ways of looking at it and different ways of healing that I may
Yeah.
have not been privy to. And so that's why this year, actually, in my own practice, I'm like taking a lot of the one-on-one clients who I've worked with in the past out, unless they're willing to be a part of the group, because I
Oh,
think you have to do the group
I
and the work
know.
to get the real benefit after being in this program.
Yay. Oh, I didn't even know that. I'm so glad to
Yeah.
hear because you hear that and it is, we're vulnerable and we don't like live in groups the same way, that we did in the past. So we kind
Yeah.
of think, then you're like, wow. And finding the right groups and good groups and, ones that are safe spaces. Obviously, we're talking about those kind of groups, but yeah, so much of a lot of my work got done in groups,
Group.
and,
Yeah.
I think when I first started, it was group therapy, but then my husband and I have been in a couples group like our whole marriage, right? It just, I know, that's the other thing, right? Like we think, oh, okay, I'll lose that 20 pounds and then I'm good. Or, even, oh, I'll get healthy so I can get pregnant and have this baby, then I'm good. And I don't have to. And you'll have learned really good skills and ways to take care of yourself. It's just, do I want to keep discovering more? Right.
Yeah. Always more
And
growth.
always more growth and in relationship and particularly, if you're in a partnership or relationship like that, it's really easy to get kind of stagnant and settle, in good spots. It's kind of like, oh, we're good now. Let's not rock the boat.
Gosh. Yes. Yes. It's so true. And one thing I just want to mention about the group thing for anyone who's like
Mm,
thinking about joining a group and is like uncertain. When I first joined my group at the beginning of 2022, for the first like 5 group meetings, my camera was off. My name was like renamed. I used a Chad Zoom account so that like no one knew who I was. And then like the more I heard other people talk, the more comfortable
mm,
I get. So like it gets more comfortable over time. And if you're
yeah,
like, I'm not a group person, I promise it'll be the best decision you've ever made. But you're so right on with saying, like the continuous growth, because I think that so often, like you said, we're like, oh, I'll be confident when I lose the 20 pounds, or I'll be
mhm,
happy when I have the baby after I get pregnant. And the fact of the matter really is that all of that is actually an inside job. Nothing
you're right.
that is external is going to make us happy or confident or whatever it is for an extended period of time. You might have that initial hit where you're like, yes, like, oh my gosh, I lost the 20 pounds. Or
Yeah,
gosh, like I got pregnant and I have a baby. But like, what's the deeper work that you have to do to feel that happiness or to feel that confidence and that trust in yourself every single day? And yeah, of
mhm,
course, we're all human beings. We're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have, days that are harder than others. But like in a general sense, like I am a confident person now. Whereas like, 10 years ago, I definitely was not. And it's
yeah,
not because my weight changed. It's not because I got married. It's because I did the work and I'm still doing the work. And like
right.
that's being part of this group. That's like doing my daily meditation, whatever the case may be. That's why the confidence there now.
Yeah. No, thank you. And thank you for going back, because I think hearing you say specifically, like, oh, this wasn't, this is how I took care of myself to, check out this group. I think that's right. And you weren't sure. So that's great. Right. And we can do things like that. And sometimes I don't think we do. It's either I have to, like, jump in and do this, but it's like, no, like we can dip our toe in the water until we're like there. So yay for that. And yay for doing the work. We're obviously big fans of that because we know, right? And you just want everyone to know. So I want to see if we could talk a little bit more specifically about your journey then, getting pregnant, becoming a new mom with this business, and just, other things that you'd want women on my podcast, anyone who's going to hear this, that you feel comfortable sharing about that journey, given everything we've said up till now. Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Zihuatanejo meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that I am learning more and more isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about what would it take for me to go. It's a 5.5-day retreat. Getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if that idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudelyons, DrGertrudelyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So so January 2020 was when I had my first son, and we all know what happened right after.
Yes, we do.
And also May of 2020 was when I opened the doors to my business. And again, it all was like very intuitive. I had zero plan attached to it. I wasn't like, oh, I need to like have like, this model running by like this day. Like, it was very intuitive. And so like all of that kind of happened all at once. And that was a big change for me and my husband, who had been together on and off. Like I said, we broke up for a little bit of time, but since 2011. So we had been together for a really long time, and it was just us two. And then I think that his expectation going into children was like, okay, you're going to be a stay-at-home mom, and like, that's the way that this is going to look. And I thought that too. It's not like he was just assuming that. That was kind of a conversation we had, because I wasn't super passionate about my old career, all of that. And I was super excited about becoming a mom. And so all of that was like a whirlwind.
Mhm.
And, we came to see you, I think it was either at like the beginning of 2021 or the end of 2020, because it was
Yeah.
like so challenging for our relationship. One, we couldn't leave the house with this new baby because we were terrified. I mean, we had
Yeah.
no idea like the data that we now have around COVID. So we were
No,
terrified
of course.
of getting sick. So we were stuck at home, and we both work from home. I should mention that was a thing with my new job, and he also works from home. So we were with each other 20.
Yes.
And then we had this new baby, which if I think it was actually you who told us, like, the first year with the first child is actually the hardest year on a marriage
Mhm.
because you're so used to it being you too. And like now you've got this baby makes three and
Mhm.
you got to figure it out and like actually really like intentionally make time for each other. And that's
Right.
something that we weren't doing. And then on top of it, like I had this new job. And so we came to see you because we were having just like we weren't fighting. It was just like we didn't feel like we had time for each other. And
Mhm.
I think for me personally, as a mother and a wife, without like Chad's opinion on the whole topic, like I was very stressed because I was like, how do I balance all of this? How do I manage all of this? And so much of my energy and attention was on this business and like
Mhm.
proving that I could do it. And that is also something like that, side note, but again, going back to the work that we talk about doing comes from childhood, like
Yeah.
feeling like I need to prove to my parents, like, I don't have to work for you. I can do this on my own. I'm like type A personality. I can do
Mhm.
it. And so I was focusing so much of my energy there and not enough on my home life. And I think that what I want anyone who's listening to know is that you always have the opportunity to step back and take a better look at like the way that you're functioning and shift and make a change. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to be doing it the way that you're doing it all the time. And so that was really what I focused a ton of my effort and energy in 2021 on. Like, how do I see less people? How do I make sure that like when I am working, it's like that's where the focus is. And then when I'm not working, the focus is on my family and being
Mhm.
with them and not feeling like I had to be promoting my business online 24/7 or marketing my business 24/7 or putting out fires 24/7. Like a client calling me at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, like that's a boundary. And like that's
Mhm.
okay for me to have that boundary because I'm spending
Yeah.
time with my husband. And so things that I had never put into practice
Yeah.
before were like muscles that I really had to start to work. But man, does it feel really good when one, you can create the self awareness, and then two, you can make the change around that self.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for underlining that, Kelly, because I think it sounds kind of obvious. Like, well, you can, if you don't, if something's not working, you can change it. But we have this wiring, like we might kind of hear that. And yes, that makes sense. But no, we really can't. This is just how
Who
it
I
is
am,
and
how
who
I
I
am.
am, how it is. And, so much of it is, and you used a really important word, I think, intention, right? We had to intend as a couple to be together and create time for each other. And then even with that intention means then, oh, I have to look at things like I'm just underlining some of what you said because I'm remembering now like the beautiful work the two of you did because, with that desire, kind of that like I got to prove myself to my family and, other family dynamics, it's we'll just throw boundaries out the window. We'll like, it's at all costs, I'm gonna succeed. Right. And when you stop and take a step back and look at it, it's like, oh yeah, no, I don't have to please my
Like,
family.
what is my
Wait, who am I doing this for? Oh,
device?
yeah.
It's like one of the best questions I ever asked myself. And I think that it's a really good exercise because I now have my own clients do it is like, what is my definition of success? Like
Mhm.
maybe, and like, I don't get me wrong, like my parents are fantastic human beings. I love them so much. And like, they had never like verbally told me like we expect you to be successful in this way. It's just what I learned from
Mhm.
being around them, growing up. My dad is
Yeah,
like successful, and like my definition of success for so long was okay, making money, like that's success. And
right.
so when I took a step back and I could say, well, how can I redefine success for myself? Like what would that be in my
Mhm.
life? Okay, success is also being a really present mom and like being able to take my kid to school and pick him up and like all of that. Like that's success for me.
Mhm.
success is partially still like making money and
Yeah,
clients, and it's
absolutely.
also having them get the results. Like that's part of success. Success is being like and showing up as a good wife. So there's so many other facets of it. And when
Mhm.
I could redefine what that was, it changed my priorities and changed my actions.
Yeah. Here. And, so we're, reminder, note to everybody, it's doable, right? It's
It is.
possible. And it takes practice, just like, like I think you mentioned this word earlier, like these were muscles I had to develop and then, and practice. They're there. They're just unused, right? The boundary muscle you mentioned, or the, setting, specific work times. I mean, even muscles to stop, and it's very different to be in work, kind of being present to my work and work mode, to being present to a small, an infant, small child. You're going from like left brain focus, and even though there might be creativity and you want to kind of bring all facets together in your work, also, you know, with the child or children, that's all right brain. That's all like, being time. And I think that can be confrontive to women. And I'm saying that not because I think that was you. I don't,
No,
but
it
if
was. You can say that.
I think we all have it to a degree, right? Because we're not, focused there, but I think there was a piece of that for you too.
Totally. I think that we live in I was actually talking about this with someone this morning. So it's, I feel like a really like good opportunity to bring this up. So over the weekend, and I think that everybody's going through this right now. It's the holidays. We all have so much going on.
Mhm.
There's personal stuff. You're decorating your house. You're cooking all the things. You have maybe have family staying with you. You're tying up the end of the year. If you're a working person, you're, tying up all those loose ends, and then you have all the social stuff, the parties,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. And so that's how life has felt for me in the last like 3 weeks. And
Mhm.
we had something every night this weekend. My kids aren't sleeping, and I was supposed to be up this morning, 8 a.m., like go, go, go. And my son was up at 4. I was like, I'm canceling the stuff that I have from 8 to
Mhm.
10. And I am gonna like listen to my body because
Mm.
and in order to show up for everything else I have on the schedule today for the clients and the podcast and all this stuff, like I have to have rest. And that
Yeah.
old version of me never prioritized that. And I think that that's
Uh,
because society, it's first of all, it's what we learn in childhood, right? To some
sure.
degree or another. And then it's
Yep.
also society is so like hyper focused on productivity over anything else. And like if you're not productive, you're lazy. And I think that when you think about like what you talk about, like the feminine energy, like there is so much value in rest. And if we can start to value that more for ourselves and see like what are the things that we can accomplish when we
Yeah.
actually take the time to rest,
I
like,
know.
and how do we feel mentally when we like take the time to do that? It's like, it's so much better than if you just like push through
Mhm.
and you end up burning yourself out.
Oh, I
Cause that's
love
not
that.
serving it.
No, it's not. And, I keep getting struck by this. This is a new realization for me, and I maybe talked about it a little bit, but you're bringing it back to focus for me is even when I've now kind of been trying to practice, like, I think I talked about it maybe in a podcast, but wherever I did a productivity fast, right? It's like, so
I love that.
yeah. And my husband's like, why are you calling it that? Like, why don't you just say you're, like it's a Sabbath or you're taking time off? I'm like, I don't know. There's something about being in the question of what is productivity and what is that doing? What's the difference? And because what I found myself, one of the aspects I found myself when I did that was, oh, I'm doing this so that I could be more productive later. And, like that was such a huge realization. It's like, okay, yeah, take this downtime, like be and see what comes up and, all of that. But still nuggling in the back there, it's like, oh, but the purpose of this time is so that I can be more productive. I'm like, wait, there's something still wrong with that. So these
Yes.
subtle things that you catch, and when you do something like that, when you just kind of step away and ask or you do something out of the norm like that, to really be in that question of like, what's is listening to a podcast, there's always this so that, oh, so that'll help me with my business. Like we need an excuse to do
Do
sometimes just
something that feels
pleasurable things,
yes.
right? I know.
Oh
And
God.
I said something to my husband recently because he sold his business, well, back in 2017, but then only more recently, like about a year, left the company that he sold it to. So he's just, consult, not just, but he's consulting, and it's just a totally different framework. And someone he was coaching with said to him, like, well, this is great. Like, you've never had time where you could just have fun, and not feel so, like you have to succeed at this business or get this or that done, and just have this time of just following your pleasure. And then we'll, kind of get back and focus more on like your bigger purpose. Right. And like, what's your next phase and purpose? And I thought about that. I'm like, well, isn't following your pleasure a purpose? Like, it had that same tone to it to me, right? Like, I'm like, "Wait, we're acting like, okay, just, go have fun and relax for a little bit, and then we'll," and I mean, it wasn't like he was saying, "Then we'll get back to work," quite so much. But there was even that edge of like, well, why isn't following your pleasure and doing the things that, make you happy? And some of it's work, some of it's golf, it's like there's a well, and doing more of those things and prioritizing that, like, I think that that's a pretty beautiful purpose.
Totally. I think that like one of the things that even like comes up with, because I deal with so many women with food stuff, is a lot of times like I'll see, and like this was a case for myself too, is like we will overeat or we'll binge or whatever because we don't have enough pleasure or rest or
Yeah.
connection in our lives. And it's like we don't give ourselves permission to have those things because we think the focus needs to be on doing, or like I only get this if I do this. Like so often. But if we can say, I deserve this pleasure, this rest, this connection,
Mhm.
just because I'm a human being and like I deserve it,
Mhm.
it really does change everything. And it's like, it sounds like a simple shift. It's very hard because we're
Mm.
so wired to believe that it's not. But I think that that's like, that is really cool. And I think the older that we get, the more we can start to, not we can, but we do start to just kind of naturally lean into that a little bit.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm grateful. And again, it goes back to continuously getting coaching, right?
Yes.
And I've had times where I mean, I've always had coaching, and I'll say this too. It's like there's times I've been kind of blasé about my coaching, and oh, lo and behold, nothing major is happening, but it's still, it's like maintenance, right? But I think that was what COVID was, one of the silver linings for me for sure, was wait a sec. Like, there was something that like really shook me up in that time. It's like to dig back into, my own work and do some of these things and these awarenesses and realizations that have been lingering, but we have to intentionally give ourselves the time to expose and, and work on and work through, and then it leads us places. I think that's, we get to see what emerges, out of that. Well, I want to say ask one more thing around mothering, because then we got to the point where now you have baby two, and I know there was like that journey, of having your second child, and you're still fairly new into that. Like, anything else that you would say, just kind of highlight from that, because I'm sure there's a ton. I know there is, so, but any aspects of what we've been talking about that we want to relate that this new piece of the journey for you?
So I don't know how much of this you know, but having our second baby was actually really hard for us.
I think you were just at the beginning of that
Yeah,
when, yeah.
when we were working together.
Mhm.
Yeah. So a part of the reason at the beginning of, or at the end of 2020, we had started to try to get pregnant with our second when my first was like 9 months. So at the end of 2020. And we got pregnant, we lost it. We got pregnant again
Mm,
in 2021 and we lost it.
mm,
And I had to look, because for a long time, my husband was saying to me, like, there's part of this you can control. He's like, you are telling other people all day long that they're in control of their health and their well-being and like
mm.
what's going on with their bodies. But like, why are you not looking inward? And I'm like, no, like, this is just a fluke, like, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until after the second loss that I was like,
Mm.
maybe he has a point.
Yeah, maybe I'll listen to him.
Right. And so I started to do a lot of like self-reflection and saying to myself, like, okay, what are things that I could do differently? And like, I
Mhm.
wasn't binge drinking the way that I was in college, but I was having, a glass of wine, every, and not to say that that is wrong for some people. It was just something that I could say, like, maybe I can shift this. Maybe I can shift some like eating a little bit more protein because I was full vegan at the time. And like maybe my body needs a little more protein to help with my hormonal balance.
Mm.
And the most important thing that I looked at is like, maybe I could be a little less stressed with work. And maybe I could take a little bit off my plate. And maybe I could most importantly, take a little space from my phone, because I was on my phone 24/7 and I was checking Instagram 24/7. And that was something that you and I had talked about when we were working with my husband. And it was something that I had to do really gradually, because I think that I know we become addicted to these platforms, these apps, like even our email, like it's addictive and it's meant to keep us on the screens. That's what like all of these, software designers want us to do. They want us to be spending more time on them. And so slowly over time, it was like, I would do one day off my phone. And then I would do like a whole weekend off my phone. And then I would do a whole week off my phone. And then I did 2 weeks off my phone. And then finally in July, so I started making a lot of these changes like May of 2021 with like the alcohol, the protein, because that's like my wheelhouse. That's what I do with my, okay, like I'm telling other people how to, use their diet and their lifestyle. Like, let me do this. But then I was like, okay, what can I do that's like even bigger? And so I was like, I'm going to take 6 full weeks off my phone. I know
I
it's
didn't
like,
know you did that. Wow, that's so congratulations. Oh, I mean, you're going to tell us more about it, but that's so
thank you.
huge. Oh my God. What's where
And
your business is, I mean, there's all those
oh,
pieces,
it's so much. And it was so scary at the beginning. But at the core of the issue, I had to say to myself, like, what's more important to me? Is it like figuring this out and like trying to stress less? Because everybody tells you that when you're trying to get pregnant, right? Like stress less, like, and then you get pregnant and you're like, okay, that's making me feel more stressed out.
Right.
But around my phone was a very big source of stress for me, because every time I looked at it, there was something that I could be doing or something that I should be doing. And so I deleted the email app off my phone. I deleted Instagram off my phone. And again, like there's so much fear there, because it's like, that's where all my clients are. Like, am I going to lose business? Like, what is going to happen? I knew that I wanted to grow my family. And like, that was priority number one. And like, everyone thinks this is the craziest story, but that was the month that we got pregnant with our second son.
I don't think it's crazy at all. Like I have goosebumps, so I know that isn't crazy. It's beautiful and true. And those are like, and that, taking a big step like that. And I don't know, when I get goosebumps like this, like to me, that's a spiritual experience. Like,
100%.
yes, it was a to do that, a doing thing that you stop, but that was a big vote for yourself. And I don't know. I'm going to stretch this even further because it came to my mind. It's like that little being, like the soul that picked you, like was waiting for that. Like I'm not coming until I see that I know. Till I see that I know you're making me cry. Okay.
I know that, like that I'm ready to actually be there and like be the mom that like they both need me to be. And like it is possible to like run a business and be a mother and be a wife. You just have to be really, like we've said the word so many times and I sound like a broken record, but like intentional about how you spend your time. And I think that like after the 6 weeks and like when we got the positive pregnancy test, I was like, what a lesson this has all been. Like, rather than looking at it from like this, like, oh my God, why did I have 2 miscarriages? Like, why did this happen to me? Like, oh my God, thank God that this happened to me. Because now I know what my boundaries have to be with work, how I need to like be more present, like what makes me feel anxious, what makes my body feel stressed, how that feels in my body, and like how I can start to control some of it. Because there's always going to be outside external stressors, but there are so much that we have control over if we really decide to like take it and do the things that we need to do. And so I've maintained that to this day. Like I said this morning when I got up, I was like, I don't feel like doing this today. Like, and I'm going to. And so it's just like it was a real lesson in like listening more to my body and more to myself.
Yeah, in that deeper way, right? And you didn't do it like, "Oh, I bet if I take 6 weeks off, I'll get pregnant."
No,
I mean, it's not why, and that's what's so beautiful about it, right? Like it was, and then to be able to value oh, thank God I had those 2 miscarriages because, it
I
was
wouldn't
like a
have learned the lesson.
message. It was it was like when we start seeing these as messages to pay attention to, not just be victimized by, right? And like not just be in the, why is this happening to me? It's like, well, ask that. Like, I wonder what, let's get curious. Like this is,
Yes.
and oh, I'll try this. Okay, that's not quite it. I feel better. Maybe that's it. So, adding this layer and this element to it is so beautiful. Well, I know we could keep talking like
I
forever.
know.
I'm like, wait, I literally just looked at
So
the
much
clock. I'm
more.
like, oh my God.
You're
So
coming on our podcast this week, and so we're going to talk more there.
I know we are. I know we are. Okay, two things. So one, I want you to share, and obviously we'll have in the show notes all the ways to find you and get to, have greater access to you when you're available. And
Yes. You can
right.
find me on Instagram at Wellness by Kelley. Kelley is spelled, it's Wellness by Kelley. And that is my website as well. I'm also like kind of on TikTok, but
Oh, okay. I haven't
I
looked
know
I'm not
I'm
on TikTok, so
dipping my toe in
yeah. I'm
water.
afraid. I'm afraid.
But yeah, Wellness by Kelley at all things.
Okay, great. Well, I'm sure people will be wanting to like find you and hear from you and all that. I hope they find you after hearing this because what you do is so beautiful. I mean, what you put out, and it can be one of those where someone like, oh, she just is. She's look at how easy she has it. You got to hear people's story, right? To get to see like what it's taken for you to have, the presence that you have. Because you could have all those beautiful things and it could look beautiful, but you know,
Doesn't feel
doesn't
good
doesn't
unless
feel good.
you're on
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So for sure that's the case. So my last question, and then we really will end, is because I always ask it, is so what does and whatever comes to mind, but when you hear rewriting the mother code, what does that mean to you, or what do you make of that?
Mm, that's a really, really good question. So it may be different than what a lot of people say, but I think that for so long, like my definition of mom was stay at home mom, because that's what
Mhm.
my mom did. And it was
Right.
wonderful. And it was fantastic. And my husband, his mom was a working mom and she was not home a lot at all. And she'll admit that
And
to you. Like that's
right.
not
Two extremes kind of, right?
right.
Yeah.
And so I thought that for a really long time, like I was a bad mom if I
Mm,
wasn't spending 24/7 with my kids. And I
mm,
think that, we got a nanny and my husband was like, I never wanted a nanny. But I think that rewriting the mother code for me really means stepping, like everything we've talked about on this episode,
mhm.
like stepping back and recognizing like not only how am I mothering my children, but like, how am I mothering the people who I see as clients? And
Yeah.
how am I mothering myself, most important?
Yes. Yes.
Because it's not just like, yes, of course it's about them. I love them with my whole heart. And like, I get to go hang out with them right now
Yeah.
as soon as we're done. But like, how can I balance those, like all of those things? Because mothering my clients and getting them results, that feels good. Mothering
Mhm.
myself feels good. And mothering my children feels good. And how can I
Mhm.
do all of those things well without feeling like I'm giving too much to one area?
To anyone area. Well, it's funny that you said, this might be different from what others, but you actually named so many aspects
That's what
of
everybody
what not what everybody says, but the
says.
what I hold as the core of rewriting the mother code, which is the most important person we need to mother is ourselves. And we're wired from our childhoods, right? To like, oh, I'm not a good mom unless I do it how my mom did, or oh, I didn't like how my mom did it, so I'm going to do it the exact opposite, right? And it's really about working through all that so you can mother the way you want to and how it matters
Yes.
to you. Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
love the work that you do so much. So thank you for
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This has been a treat and a joy. And I hope that maybe you'll actually come back again because we could dig into even more.
yes, I would love that.
Oh, yay. Okay.
Thank
Thanks, Kelley.
you.
Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother. Wait, no, subscribe to Mother. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women. Well, actually, everybody, men included. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com. I'll see you next time.